I'm not sure exactly what the writer's aim with this season is. But if I had to guess, I'd say that after just one incomplete first season and a shorter than usual second season, they have already run the well so dry of ideas, not that they really had any in the first place, that the only thing they can think to do now is look at all the cool stuff that Batman has and hit copy-paste. Not much of a shocker when that's literally how the series began, right? And God knows Supergirl was doing it long before them. Only now, them having a giant, gaping, empty void where creativity would reside in literally anyone else working in show business is really coming back to bite them. Because you can see what they want to do. What they want to do is all of Batman's villains for their own purposes. I guess because Batwoman doesn't have any bad guys of her own that they give a crap about. But, nuts! The studio probably won't let us use those villains because they're saving them for movies and other shows and they can't appear in two things at once or something. But that was the only idea we had! Now what do? Well, it turns out what they do is dole out the villains' weapons so a bunch of bargain basement randos can use them and come up with some pathetically cheap imitations of said villains while they trip over their own feet as they build up to the debut of the one villain worth a damn that the WB was stupid enough to actually give them permission to use. It seems like this whole process would be a lot easier on everyone if the writers would just get some original ideas for once in their laughable excuse for a career, but leave it to them to finally find something they actually want to work hard at. Being lazy. The episode begins with roommate shenanigans, as Alice annoys Sophie while she tries to watch a scary movie. Looks like this is what's gonna pass for comedy on this show for a while, but it's all so painfully unfunny, the producers might want to think about using a laugh track so viewers will actually be able to tell. They hear a noise at the window that scares them, but it's just Ryan coming to collect Alice because Montoya got a lead on one of the missing weapons, and she didn't call before she came over because then the scene couldn't happen. I'm still not clear at all about how this whole arrangement of theirs works, because Ryan and Alice arrive at a crime scene way ahead of the cops, and Ryan says they need to do what they need to do fast before the cops show up and take all the evidence. But Alice's work release thing happened because the mayor signed off on it, so wouldn't the police be under orders to hang back and let them do their thing or whatever? It seems like they're doing all this behind the cops' backs. Couple that with Ryan having to break into the GCPD just to check on some evidence that Montoya should have had access to, and it just makes me think this entire operation is off the books. So what happens when the police find Alice just walking around free? Do they even know she's out of Arkham? Is that public knowledge? I have so many questions about this. Questions the writers really should have asked themselves at some point before they started writing this nonsense. They find a half-naked dead guy, who of course must have been a cross-dresser judging by the scraps of clothing he still has on, and they need to recover the bindings he's tied up with because Montoya thinks the killer used Catwoman's whip. And if you're wondering why it would be such a big deal that they need to recover a whip, this is a super special whip because Catwoman stole some of Batman's nanotech and wove it into the whip, making it a super amazing and badass indestructible whip, and I've already lost you, haven't I? Imagine how I felt. I had to keep watching. So yeah, Catwoman, the career criminal, is somehow skilled in the science of weaving nanotech into inanimate objects. Maybe that was an elective at Jewel Thief School. Doesn't matter anyway though, this looks like just a boring old regular S&M whip. Nuts. So Ryan's gonna call someone from the illegal underground abortion clinic to pick up the bodies so Mary can do an autopsy, because Mary does those now, and the police don't do them anymore apparently, or you'd think Montoya would come down on them for removing a murder victim from a crime scene. Then she orders Alice to figure out who killed this poor bastard, and now that she's outsourced all the actual work to other people, Ryan is going to a dinner party. Our hero, ladies and gentlemen. Back at the Wayne building, the stock is down 50%, people are quitting, and Ryan says she'll fix it, but she has no idea how. Possibly because she has no actual business education or training. So yeah, Kate making her the CEO made perfect sense. Mary barges in, bitching about why Ryan didn't throw out this dinner invitation Jada Jet sent her. So because Mary's an idiot, Ryan has to remind her that they found evidence linking Jada's company to this season's secret society last week, so maybe they ought to use this as an opportunity to do detective stuff. Mary still thinks that's dumb, but she's drinking water like she's dying of thirst and loses her train of thought. And Ryan assures her that she knows the risks. That's why she's bringing Sophie, the paragon of incompetence, as backup. Alice is calling this a date. Sophie says it isn't, but she's getting all gussied up for it anyway, because lesbians. Then Montoya calls Alice, and Sophie tells her to get her ass over to Montoya's office pronto. And again, I have a lot of questions. Does Alice now have the autonomy to just walk around the city freely without guards or supervision or a chaperone or anything? Why do they trust her not to do what she's been doing since the series began? Does she have a car, or does she have to take the bus to Montoya's office? How would Alice taking the bus even work out? Do the citizens of Gotham know about this work release thing? Because the most infamous killer in the city sitting on a bus might turn a few heads. And may I remind the writers that it was as recently as the last episode that Alice, who was a mass murderer when she was in her right mind, was suffering from delusions, seeing things that weren't there. And now they're trusting her to walk from place to place by herself and what, just crossing their fingers that she won't snap and kill somebody else like she tried to just 2 episodes ago? Okay. Cut to Ryan and Sophie arriving at Jada Jet's house, and Sophie introduces herself as Ryan's girlfriend, because lesbians. The chef, who came all the way from Metropolis for this gig, is informed that they have an extra guest. He then chops the head off a pig, saying it's time for the professor to teach the class how to squeal! And then he does a villainous laugh so campy and so over the top Dr. Evil would be impressed. I guess the studio had no plans to use Professor Pig in the movies or Titans or Doom Patrol or whatever, so he drew the short straw, and now here he is. God help him. There's some pointless banter before dinner. Because Sophie and Ryan are idiots, they didn't get their cover stories straight, so it's awkward. Then after Sophie excuses herself to go snoop around, Jada tells Ryan that whatever's going on between her and Marcus needs to stop, and that dying will be the easy part for Ryan and a lot of other folks if she doesn't do exactly what Jada says. Then Marcus walks in. If Jada had wanted to avoid that, maybe they could have met at a restaurant or someplace where Marcus wouldn't find them. But there I go again, thinking about things. Like a jackass. Sophie's planting a bug in Jada's office. Luke tells her to get out of there, but she starts looking around and finds an old family photo in a frame that was folded up so it wouldn't show Jada's late husband. Almost as if there's something she's ashamed of about that. By complete coincidence, I'm sure, he was white. Sophie tries to email Luke the photo, but her phone's not working for some reason. Then Jada walks in and almost catches Sophie doing stuff she shouldn't be doing. Downstairs, because Jada left Ryan alone with Marcus right after telling her to stay away from him, Marcus and Ryan are having a tiff. He's angry that Ryan is seeing Jada behind his back right after they agreed to work together against Jada, so maybe this shit runs in the family. Ryan breaks the news to him that Jada already knew about their agreement, and he's like, what? How? Gosh, I don't know, Marcus, but it probably didn't help that you were photographed together at the press junket last week. Dumbass. Cut to Montoya's office, which is totally deserted, so I still have no clue who's in on this Alice arrangement and who isn't. They've decided that the whip isn't Catwoman's whip, so Montoya hands Alice a big box of files and orders her to figure out who did that pesky murder while Montoya knocks back a cold one or two. I guess all that napping on the job made her thirsty. All the files are pretty boring, except for one in particular which is fat as a phone book. So Alice realizes the plot is saying that Montoya brought her and Batwoman together for a very specific reason. Not so they could recover all those missing weapons, but so they could find Poison Ivy. Now, a few episodes ago, I believe I gave this season 5 episodes before some woman would be sleeping with Montoya, didn't I? Well, here we are in episode 5, and guess what her hang-up about Poison Ivy is? Yeah. Turns out, Renee and Pamela Isley were a thing in college, at least until one of Pam's classmates, who of course was a white guy, used her as a guinea pig in his sick experiments, injected her with science, and turned her into a plant-obsessed lunatic! So there you have it. It wasn't Poison Ivy's choice to be evil. She was just an innocent victim. It was all a white dude's fault. Shocking. Except that it isn't. So Montoya asked Batman to bury Poison Ivy alive, so her theory is that he hid her somewhere under the city, away from water and sunlight. If he prevented her from having water, I'm pretty sure she'd be long dead by this point. But on this show, who the hell knows? Then Alice starts hallucinating postcards from Daddy again, so she runs off to see Mary. Just for the record, because I know some people are going to bring this up, during all this, Alice mentions offhandedly that Batman never killed anyone. Could be a retcon, could also be that she just didn't know about Batman killing the Joker. I don't see how she could know, it's not something they would tell her. More than likely, though, it's just discontinuity because the writers forgot. Wouldn't be the first time. Hell, it wouldn't even be the first time in this episode. Back at Jada's house, everyone's at the dinner table, and Marcus's date makes things even more awkward by doing that thing the writers liked to do last season, where characters would just explain how everyone's feeling so they didn't have to do any work to actually show it. Then she goes to the bathroom. Marcus is really irritated now, and he calls Ryan a backstabber for meeting Jada like this. Ryan points out that Jada orchestrated the whole get-together and wonders if Marcus showing up wasn't all part of her plan. Jada then questions Ryan's agenda, and Ryan says that her agenda with Jada tonight was just to say thank you. Thank you for giving me up, because I didn't get all the rich people stuff, but I got a home, I got love, I got a real mom, and all that junk. And if that's the way Ryan really felt, then Jada wouldn't be able to get under her skin the way she keeps doing, but she does. In fact, it really contradicts things that Ryan said in 2 previous episodes whenever Sophie talked to her about this, and she indicated that she wanted a mom. So I'm calling bullshit! Then we cut to Marcus's date in the bathroom having some kind of anxiety attack when the chef, wearing a pig mask, which beats wearing a mask made of ass, I guess, sneaks up on her from behind and stabs her to death. Then Marcus is in the middle of a toast about family and loyalty when everyone at the dinner table goes limp. Professor Pig puts some kind of paralytic in the drinks, but it's a very crappy paralytic because once again, the only way the good guys can win is if the villain is a complete moron. So Piggy walks in and reveals that he's Laszlo Valentine, an employee of Jada's who worked as a chef at her office until she fired him, which caused him to go into debt, get divorced, lose his family, and it's all her fault. He was even the one who told Marcus about this dinner tonight, although he says Ryan being there was unexpected, which doesn't make any sense at all because the dinner was for Ryan in the first place. It was supposed to be just Jada and Ryan. She was literally the only person on the guest list. Jesus Christ, I know none of these writers give a shit, but you'd think one of these scripts would have gotten proofread by accident at this point. So Laszlo's plan is to kill Marcus in front of Jada, but Ryan stops him by grabbing a knife, despite being, paralyzed, and stabbing him in the leg. Then she gets up, despite being, paralyzed, and tries to help Marcus, but he can't move because he's paralyzed. And also male, which I'm sure had nothing to do with it, right? Then Sophie gets up, despite being, paralyzed, and helps Marcus, while Ryan goes upstairs to help Marcus's date, despite being, paralyzed. Ryan finds the girlfriend dead. Meanwhile, the others find that Laszlo locked them in the house and cut off the phone service. So naturally, they just break one of the many large windows we can see in the background and quickly escape out of the... I'm just messing with you. Actually, despite being, paralyzed, the 3 women drag Marcus's helpless, paralyzed body upstairs so they can lock themselves in the panic room, which has no weapons and no way of calling for help. Ryan thinks they just need to hang out in there until someone notices they're missing, but then Marcus starts having a seizure, so that could be a problem. There are EpiPens in the basement that can save Marcus though, and the only thing between them and the basement is the knife-wielding madman who's currently in the kitchen building a bomb. Because that's something chefs know how to do. So Jada distracts Laszlo with the intercom while Ryan tries to get around him all sneaky-like, but she ends up making some noise, so there's a pretty clumsy, awkward fight, what with him being on one good leg and her being, paralyzed, but Ryan finally manages to lock herself in the basement. The EpiPens are on the top shelf, which Ryan tries to climb up to reach despite being, paralyzed, but the shelf falls over and pins her to the ground, so now Ryan's reaching for the EpiPens while Laszlo is breaking through the door. Back in the panic room, Sophie gets pissy and tells Jada that she's Jordan Moore's sister, and there's an unintentionally funny moment when Jada seems to truthfully have no idea who that is. She gave almost as few shits about the sister as I did. Sophie doesn't believe Jada would be oblivious to all these sick freezing experiments being conducted by her own employees. Jada keeps denying it and says that she's not the monster Sophie's made her out to be, even though she literally threatened to kill multiple people just a few minutes ago. Yeah, okay. Cut to the illegal underground abortion clinic where Mary has the autopsy results. Those things that usually take weeks to come back. Yeah, Mary got them in a couple hours. You writers. Alice asks what the deal is with all the plants Mary's got all of a sudden, which launches Mary into a weird rant about how awesome plants are. Gee, I wonder where this is going. But Alice cuts her off and admits that her hallucinations are back, which instantly turns Mary into a massive bitch. Her exact words: "You reap what you sow, Alice. All the murders, the pain, the misery that you've inflicted, they were the seeds that you planted for the garden you'll be buried in." If this is an example of the type of dialogue Bridget Regan is gonna have to sell, she's in trouble. Now, as far as the story is concerned, Mary says this because what happened to Pamela Isley is now happening to Mary. But you really wouldn't know it because playing the bitch card and shitting all over someone when they're at their most vulnerable like this is what Mary does on a typical day. This is pretty much exactly what she did to Jacob in season 2. Hell, if you switch some of the verbiage around, it's basically the same speech. So again, I'm calling bullshit because what's meant to be a sign that Mary's starting to turn evil is really just Mary being Mary. It's not like she's never acted this way before, writers, and you should know, you're the ones who f***ing wrote it! Then Mary mentions that she got exposed to some weird plant stuff in the park. She took a sample of it, and Alice recognizes it immediately. Back to Laszlo, who's got Ryan's body over his shoulder, and wants Jada to open up the panic room or he'll kill her daughter. But Jada's a bitch, so she has to think about it for a minute. She does eventually come out though, and she distracts Laszlo long enough for Ryan to inject herself with one of the several EpiPens that Laszlo didn't notice she grabbed in the basement. This partially cures her partial paralysis, so she throws the other EpiPens to Sophie so she can save Marcus while Ryan fights Laszlo again. Then Sophie gets in on the action too, but they're still, partially paralyzed, so they can't really get the upper hand. But they do get Laszlo's attention just long enough for Marcus to jump him from behind and brutally stab him to death over and over, Patrick Bateman style. It's actually a pretty shocking moment, which will be instantly ruined when we find out where they're going with it. Back in Montoya's office, Alice just magically knows that some asshole called the Flamingo did the murder, then produces Mary's plastic baggie with the poison ivy vines, expecting this to buy her a vacation, because the infamous mass murderer gets vacations. But Montoya says those vines are dead, and the vines don't die unless ivy infected someone else. Alice seems to know what this means, and she smiles. And if it means Mary's life might be in danger, yeah, that'd put a smile on my face too. Back to Jada's house. The cops are there now, and for some reason they have no interest in Marcus whatsoever, even though Marcus just brutally slaughtered someone. And sure, you could call that self-defense. The guy did try to kill them after all, but I would think, at the very least, they'd want to take Marcus downtown to answer some questions. And maybe clean all the human gore off him. But no, they don't care. Maybe because Marcus is black and thus cannot be a criminal? Maybe because he's rich? Either way, he doesn't even need to stick around and make a statement. Wow! Sophie Captain Obvious Moore thinks Jada's hiding something, and yeah, I should f***ing think so Ryan goes to talk to her again. Jada easily found the bug Sophie planted, hashtag Sophie sucks at everything, and she again claims that she didn't know about Jordan or any of the murders the guy she hired committed, and the whole point of that was that no one else would get hurt. And then she reveals what presumably is the real story. Marcus was on a school trip one day when the Joker commandeered the bus, put his joy buzzer on Marcus's noggin, gave him a big ol' shock to the brain, and this turned Marcus into a sociopath. And she shows Ryan some old videos of child Marcus doing supposedly creepy stuff. Most of it's pretty typical. Burning ants with a magnifying glass, getting angry at his mom. What kid hasn't done that? But the last one has Marcus laughing as his dad starts choking due to a peanut allergy. Yeah, okay, that's a little concerning. So Jada tried everything to fix Marcus, nothing worked. Then she found out about the freeze serum, and she thought that might buy her some time to find a solution. And in fact, everything Jada's done since the day she met Ryan has been to protect her. Called it. And now she's asking for Ryan's help because she wants to stop Marcus before anyone else gets hurt. Jada, you're the CEO of a company on par with Wayne Enterprises. You have all the money and resources to easily deal with an issue like this. You could make a public statement that Marcus was taking a leave of absence from the company and then have him quietly committed to some mental health facility in Switzerland or something. This is not rocket science. Why are you overcomplicating it so much when you just watched this kid brutally hack a man to death? How long do you really think you can keep this a secret while Marcus is walking around free? Not very long, I'm guessing, because if what the episode ends on is any indication, Marcus gives zero shits about being discreet. He goes home to his apartment or whatever, still covered in Laszlo's blood. He takes some of that blood and smears it over his mouth, making his mouth look kind of similar to the Joker's mouth. Oh yeah. They're finally going there. I'm not sure if this would be considered cultural appropriation or whiteface or something else, but who are we kidding? Either way, the writers aren't going to say shit about it. Truly, these people have no shame. It's too early to tell where this is going exactly, but based on what's happened this season already, the dots connect. The writers couldn't use Mad Hatter, so they just made up a new one. They couldn't use Killer Croc, so they made up a new one. So now, if they can't use the Joker, unbelievable. Are the Batwoman comics really so bad that there's nothing in there they can take from? They have to take everything from Batman because him for being an actual good character with actual good stories and good villains? You know, writers, the Batwoman comics already fit a woman. It's not Batman's fault if they suck. Look, this is a goddamn joke. It's dumb and stupid and cheap and pathetically, hilariously unoriginal. Not to mention hypocritical, because if they did a new white version of a black character from the comics, we all know what everyone would be saying about it. But if that's what the plan is for this, I will take it in a heartbeat over these writers getting their grubby paws on the real Joker. They already killed him off screen anyway. Lucky him. So if they want to sodomize some crappy new character they made up who no one gives a shit about by turning him into some D-grade Joker knockoff, you know what, guys? Go right ahead. Go on, ruin Marcus. There's nothing to ruin anyway. Him up to your heart's content. That is easily the lesser of two evils here, and it's only gonna hasten your show's own demise when everybody starts laughing their asses off at it and you. I can't wait. So there you go. Another boring, crappy shit stain of an episode where the characters are idiots. Every story is somehow about lesbians. Mary seemingly begins to turn evil, but really just starts acting more like herself. Professor Pig is turned into a lame-ass, campy, disgruntled chef. The Joker of all characters is now getting ripped off, and there isn't a single original idea to be found anywhere. Now, the writers did actually break some new ground here, for them anyway, by having Marcus, a black person, get blood on his hands and do some messed up shit instead of the white character taking the heat for everything. But when the cops can't seem to care less about the psychotic murder he just committed, it kind of loses something. And at the end of the day, did anyone really expect awesome billionaire CEO Jada Jet to not be revealed to be a good guy? The twist that the man was actually the evil one was about as surprising as Ryan still managing to be super amazing and badass, despite being, you know, paralyzed. Black Joker. Jesus H. Christ. And you know what? In hindsight, I really should have seen this coming. The signs were all there, but after all this time, I guess I'm still underestimating the depths these writers are willing to sink to. That is fucking terrifying. Thanks for watching. Leave a comment down below, ding the bell icon, and follow my social media to always be notified when I upload new stuff. Links to all that and to my live streaming channel are down there. Thumbs up the video, share, subscribe, make sure you're still subscribed, and I'll be back with more soon. So stay tuned for that, do all the YouTube things, and I'll see you next time. Black Joker.